thank you all for joining us today at Grad Ireland Live. I hope you're enjoying the day. And so we're going to kick things off here. We have a seminar panel on Digital for All, so gender equality in technology. And I'm joined here today by Emily from PwC, Gemma from Nucleo, and Denise from Guidewire. So I suppose we might kick things off there with yourself, Gemma, just if you want to introduce yourself, maybe a little bit about your background and your experience.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Gemma Thorne. I'm working with a company called Nucleo. We are a business and technology consulting company who deliver kind of asset management solutions for our clients. In terms of my background, I did biomedical engineering in DCU, and then I went in to work in the kind of business consulting space in Accenture for a couple of years. So I've got kind of a range of experience across kind of project management, business change, and technology solution projects, and have, as I said, have been with Nucleo the last year, who are like a small startup kind of consultancy, and we're growing across a range of different clients in Ireland at the moment.
Amazing. And Denise, you might tell us a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, so I'm Denise Airlie. I'm head of talent attraction at Guidewire here in EMEA. I also have in my remit campus programs and employer brand. Guidewire is a software company. We build a platform as a service for the insurance industry. So if you think of some of the biggest, most complex insurance companies in the world, they run on the Guidewire platform. So that's what we do. And I've been in talent attraction in many forms, but always across the technology sector for more years than I care to mention.
So we're going to learn loads from you today, Denise. Amazing. And then finally, but by no means leastly, we've got yourself, Emily.
Yeah, so my name is Emily Kennedy. I'm working with PwC. So PwC is a professional services firm. We offer advisory, tax, assurance, and risk services. And my particular team that I'm working on is ESG, so that's environmental, social, and governance. And I suppose my link today with tech is I would have an active role in our Women in Tech team. So our Women in Tech, for context, was set up to mentor and educate and empower women in their technology careers in PwC. So my background, I studied social science for my undergraduate, and then I went on to do a master's in management and marketing. And before joining PwC, I would have worked in a sustainable startup fashion company, which was a lovely way to start. So yeah.
Amazing. And I suppose you've all got experience with I suppose in an industry that is predominantly, male dominated. And I suppose, what would you advise students for going into that industry? Like, how has your experience been so far? And is there something that you would, what advice would you give to those students? Maybe Gemma, you might kick things off.
Yeah, sure. I think my first advice would be getting a mentor when you get into a role or a client. So just picking, it could be a male or female, but just someone to help you with that career progression side. And then secondly, I'd say be confident as well when applying for roles. I think men, when they look at, say, this job description, will apply often when they only hit half the criteria, and women will generally second guess themselves. So I think have the confidence, apply, and just trust in yourself that you have the ability to do the role.
Yeah, and I suppose it can be a little bit maybe intimidating for, new fresh graduates or for someone who's not experienced in that industry especially. But what would you say to someone who does want a mentor and would like to approach someone? Who would you advise within companies to act as those mentors, and who can students, I suppose, go to?
I think it's like looking around your company that you're in and kind of finding those role models and just approaching them. A lot of, I like myself, love to kind of mentor juniors as well that come in the door. And I think finding someone that you aspire to be or where you see your career heading, and kind of just asking, I think ask the question and put yourself forward.
Yeah, amazing. And Denise, what would you say to a fresh grad who's coming into the industry in technology, being in that male-dominated industry?
Yeah, just on the mentorship piece, I think the advice would be have a goal in mind of something that you want to achieve through the mentorship. Come to the table with things that you want to make happen, and that person can guide you through and help you navigate you through the business. it's really important, and I'd say it to everybody out there, basically network. Find like-minded people, get out there, have conversations, meet for coffee, understand what they do, why they do it, and where your role might fit in when you join a company. Get involved in the social element. Typically, companies now are very driven towards diversity, equity, and inclusion goals. So we typically have employee resource groups. Again, it's a group of like-minded people that have similar interests, and it's a great way to put yourself out there, engage with others in the company.
Yeah, and I suppose especially in this hybrid world of working, it's I suppose more important than ever to see those groups within the company that you're within and see what resources that they have. So what would be your experience, Emily, in PwC and around that?
Well, I think it's worth mentioning as well, like, unfortunately, there is huge gaps in terms of gender equality still. It's not just in STEM, like, it's across society and politics, leadership, everything really, and even care work and stress levels. So if you are a girl, a woman in STEM, studying STEM subjects or entering the STEM workforce, it's likely you're just going to really feel that. You're going to really directly have first-hand experience of that gender gap. But I think it's to view that as your advantage as well. Like, organizations don't want one type of person at work. They want diverse perspectives. And to just put context on that, PwC, in our consulting and advisory services, we have zoologists working, or social workers or doctors. And that's really, you represent a different perspective. And I think as a woman in a male-dominated sector, you have a really valid perspective to share. And as you mentioned, like, diversity, inclusion, and equity goals are not just like an ethical thing for organizations to do or a tick box exercise. They're actually linked to better business performance. So it's I suppose with PwC as well, there's a huge push for this, and we want women to be in the space and to grow and develop and lead ultimately. So
absolutely, and I suppose you touched on equity today, and with it being International Women's Day today, their hashtag for it is #EmbraceEquity, and I suppose it's looking at how companies can implement this within their companies. I don't know, Gemma, is there something within Nucleo where there are steps being made towards that, embracing equity?
Yeah, I think in Nucleo anyway, we have kind of a unique position where on our leadership team, we actually have a 60-40 split female to male, which is very impressive because I know a lot of companies are usually male dominated at that leadership level. I think kind of in terms of that kind of equity side, when we hire people, we look at who's best fit for the role. Gender really doesn't come into it, but as Emily, you touched on, it's really about building diverse teams. And we want diversity of thought. That's how our clients actually benefit from us in terms of our performance. So hiring all of the same person doesn't really make sense for us. We're a people business. And that's what we look for in terms of when we're hiring and in our recruitment space as well. I think the key thing that I've noticed, because I actually am doing a lot of the recruitment for Nucleo at the moment, is when we put up a job spec, we're seeing a lot of the males applying to ones that seem a bit more male-dominated, like a business analyst role. And then recently I put out a change like lead role, and we had loads of females. So it's how you actually put out the job spec as well to attract 100%. Talent.
Yeah, because actually we had we did some A/B testing of some of the advertising that we put out there in terms of advertising roles. And what we discovered, and this was globally, was that if you have a female representing in the visual imagery, in the conversations, a female tone of voice, it actually increased engagement across the board, regardless of being female or male. And this was in every territory globally that we had. It was across the board. So that was really insightful for us. Women will engage more, people will engage more when they see that diverse representation out there to the marketplace as well. So that's informed how we engage with the talent audience as well.
And that's really interesting to hear, and it's something that was touched on a little bit in a previous seminar, and it's that it's down to language at times, and it's like what you both mentioned there about job descriptions, that it's it's maybe looking at that language and what we're using, and the language is changing every day. I don't know, Emily, if you have the experience as well in PwC. It's just, I suppose it is hard to keep up a little bit, but it's how you maybe put that job description together to target that, I suppose, all genders, and not just having the males applied to all the jobs.
Yeah, I think all of this that we're talking about right now there's a shift in PwC at the moment as well around this kind of inclusion first approach, so that like an inclusive mindset is what creates inclusive behaviours ultimately. But unconscious bias, I think, is what that really speaks to there. And we do a lot of training. That's a real focus now in terms of our inclusion first approach around training for unconscious bias. So, for example, we use metaverse technologies to actually step into the shoes of someone else. And that has been proven, I suppose, to cultivate empathy and create more inclusive leadership skills, because it really is about empathy training and trying to understand, but you're often not aware of your biases. So you might even, for the example, applications or how you create a job spec, you're not intentionally excluding a demographic, but ultimately it can happen. And I think as well, as you touched on, Gemma, with the soft skills versus hard skills, women often see themselves in soft skills roles, softer side, whereas men will go for those hard STEM skill sets. But it's about, I suppose, challenging that bias as well. And we would work a lot with this Tech We Can program. So we go into primary schools and talk to primary school students, and it's about really kind of breaking down that bias and showing look, a career in STEM is really exciting, and it's for you as a female, it's for everybody. So I think there's a lot of work to be done around unconscious bias.
And that's a great point around going further back to primary level.
Yeah.
It's really important. We've seen the girls make decisions very early in their life. At age 9 even, they opt out of STEM subjects, which is incredible. And so we have to do our part in making sure that girls feel that they can get involved, and even doing simple things like the Out of Code and getting involved in STEM initiatives like I Wish, which is amazing. They would have, 15,000 or so schoolgirls at TY level getting involved in STEM conversations. So, I think female leaders need to step up as sponsors of young women, stepping into the STEM roles, and also there's such a variety of roles. It's not just about coding or engineering. You have, for example, business analysis if you enjoy more on the communication and requirements gathering side of things. There's many opportunities in the STEM sector.
And it's really, sorry, go on. But I was just about to, on that point as well, I think to work in technology or STEM, you don't need to be a technologist. It's really about your mindset and your perspective and your problem-solving capabilities. So I think it's about expanding our definition on that as well.
Absolutely, and I suppose all the things that we've touched on there are the challenges to attracting, a wider set of, applicants to, or bringing in more diverse employees into those companies. Do you think there are, a few other challenges that we can actively start to, work to change and to start making a move on certain things? So Denise, you're nodding along. I feel like you've got something great to say here.
I think we have to look across the spectrum of women, and so, for example, as a working mother myself, it becomes difficult to move your career forward when you're taking time out and you're perhaps excluded from that, and you have to really make a conscious effort. So we recently got involved in the Women Reboot program. So this is around female returners to the workplace. So they may have a plethora of life skills, but they're being overlooked because they haven't been in a technical role for several years, let's say. So we're involved with Digital Skills Net, where they have a combined educational program, and we give them an internship, paid work experience, and it gives them time to prove themselves, to ramp up, to reskill, to upskill, and I'm really excited about it. I really want to take it forward and keep growing across the functions at Guidewire. So it's things like that that really excite and interest me to see that happening.
No, that's amazing to hear, and I suppose it's trying to change that mindset and in people who have maybe left their career for a while and think, oh, it's done and dusted, and it's definitely not the case at all. Gemma, do you have anything, like, I suppose when it comes to those challenges that companies face in attracting females into roles, do you think there's something else that we can kind of work towards in trying to change that?
Yeah, I think ultimately, as we kind of just have discussed it, it kind of comes down to secondary school and primary school where people have access to STEM subjects. And I think I read a stat that 2/3 of girls say their careers to STEM are blocked off because they don't have access to STEM subjects in school, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. And I think, as you said, it's just around as an employer, you have a responsibility to get out and kind of make that accessible to students, make it known that you can have a career in technology. And as we said, we kind of touched on it all here. To have a career in Nucleo, you don't need to have a 4-year technology degree. We will hire business analysts, we hire people from all sorts of degrees. And yeah, we're looking for diversity. So I think that if you take anything away from that today, that to go down the road of technology doesn't mean you need to kind of have coding skills. That's absolutely not the case, because we need a whole blend of different skills.
Absolutely. And I suppose, do you think you foresee this, we of course have these challenges, but it changing in the future, or have you already seen that change already? Within the workplace? Denise, you mentioned that you've quite a bit of experience in your career. Like, is there something notable over the last 5-10 years that you've seen is like a really positive change?
Well, the key one is flexibility of where you show up to work. That's incredible. We have a sort of a work from almost anywhere program. As long as we have an entity, people can go work somewhere else in the world for up to 90 days, and also we have hybrid working, so people can blend between working from home and working in the office. So that's a big change. But also how people learn and develop and grow their career is changing dramatically. Even major universities are, swapping up degrees for micro-learning. So it's skills are changing at such a fast pace. Literally, a role's skills could change by 50% within 2 years at the moment. It's that fast paced, so people have to keep learning. So if I could give any advice to up and coming young women, is to keep learning and keep pushing forward and be curious, because that never stops. So it's that sort of lifelong learning approach. It's really important, and we're using technology to scale that. It should be self-service. It's in your hands how you build out your career. It's not necessarily about moving up. It's not necessarily a linear path. As I heard a recent graduate mention at Guidewire, it's really take the opportunity to grow laterally and take on stretch projects, shadow someone, seek a mentor, as you mentioned, seek out a sponsor at a high level. These are all things that people should be doing on a constant basis to grow their career.
Absolutely, and I think there's lots of advice that we can give, recent female graduates. Emily, do you have any advice that you would give, a recent female graduate, wanting to pursue a career, within PwC or within other kind of technology companies?
Yeah, I think it's just to really, there's so much choice now, isn't there? It's like, even at this fair, there's just so many paths to choose from, and everyone has a different perspective on what's best or where to pursue. So I think you have to really kind of tune in and figure out what do you actually value, what are you inspired by. If you can't find out what you're inspired by, what annoys you, work backwards, but really to, I suppose, create a career that you feel quite purposeful about. I think that's really important, especially, as I say now, there's just so much opportunity. But I just want to touch as well on a point you mentioned about motherhood. I think that's really interesting with PwC. There's a focus on gender sensitive policy planning and business practices. So just recently in the last year, we've released new policies around fertility journeys, menopause, a whole range, I suppose, of different policies that support women at different stages of their lives. And I think it's really interesting how our workforce, I suppose, will change in the coming years to support this inclusion of employees, particularly women. I think it's a really big issue. You know, we actually released a report today, and it found that the gender pay gap, one of the key drivers of the gender pay gap, is the motherhood. There's a penalty for it due to slower career progression and lower lifetime earnings, and that starts when a woman has their first child. So that's a systemic issue beyond just them. So I suppose it's about how organisations respond to that for women, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's something that, you know, maybe when someone walks into their company, they feel that gender imbalance and that inequality within a company. So it's really nice to see, you know, the likes of PwC and other companies making that change. And I suppose, what would you say to someone who, you know, is potentially a fresh graduate or there a couple of years and sees this, you know, or feels that gender inequality in that company? Is there something, Emily, like you would say to that student or graduate, or, you know, any advice that you would give them, or any actions that they maybe could take?
Yeah, I think it's so cliche, but in some ways you do have to kind of act upon and be the change you want to see if you notice something wrong. And the Women in Tech initiative in PwC is a really good example, because it started around 5 years ago, but it was actually a bottoms-up organic approach, and it was a graduate who noticed this gender imbalance within the tech team, and she brought it to a more senior member of staff and said, like, this is wrong, you know, like, let's do something about it. And from that, the Women in Tech initiative actually grew, and since then, you know, it's been around now for 5 years. It's included and touched hundreds of people, and we do a whole host of initiatives around mentorship and community volunteering and education, upskilling and making tech accessible for women. And I think, you know, that's an incredible example of how you can actually drive change, even as a junior member. But you really do need to back yourself, and you need to take the initiative with it, you know?
Absolutely, and it's definitely not easy to do that. And it's, I suppose, like you said, it's being that change that you want to see within your company. Gemma, is there anything that you've maybe seen in your company or have had experience yourself that you were like, okay, if you see this happen, you know, this is maybe what you should do?
Yeah, I think, as you said, you have to speak up, otherwise no change is going to happen. I actually have been kind of fortunate in my career that I haven't come across any major, like, gender kind of issues as such. But like that, I have seen issues where, as you said, a team has been put forward, and you actually ask the question, should we be putting forward all males? I don't like on this, and actually just asking the question. And in our company, again, it's having that ability to feel comfortable asking the question, and that's what we try in terms of our culture, try and enforce that it's a culture of inclusivity. If anyone has anything to say, that they're always listened to, no matter if they're junior or senior. And I think that's really important in terms of a company's culture, and also addressing the kind of gender pay gap issues, because you have to be upfront about it. If we don't speak about it, nothing's going to change.
Right.
Absolutely, and I suppose before we open up the floor there to a few questions, is there anything, you know, has there been a really amazing piece of advice that you've received in your career that you think, oh, you know, I'd love to share that with others, Denise?
I had an epiphany sort of mid-career, and it wasn't anyone giving me advice per se. I just learned my lessons the hard way sometimes by experiencing certain things. And one thing I'd say to everyone, and my own children included, basically, and to the back yourself piece, I love that, you know, I'd definitely say back yourself, but also don't necessarily focus on competing with others around you. You know, when you're coming in as a graduate, for example, there may be lots of other people at a similar level around you. I always think of a sporting analogy, you know, think of your personal best. So always try to bring your best self to work and focus in on what you want to achieve for you. Because I found that when I worked in competitive environments, I'd be busy looking at what other people were doing around me, and I'd be totally distracted by it. And I'd lose sight of what I was actually doing in the first place. So that is a key thing. Just focus on competing with yourself and bringing your personal best is the main one.
Oh, absolutely. And Emily, is there anything either you've received or that you would like to, I suppose, give advice to others?
No, I love that. I love everything you said as well. And I think we've already touched on that, but I think women are more prone, I'm generalizing, but I personally feel this, will be more prone to kind of self-doubt, or it ties into imposter syndrome, or definitely, maybe we referred to this earlier, but that statistic that men will apply for the job if they're 100% qualified, women will apply if they're 60% qualified. You kind of have to tune in as well to that kind of internal narrative that is maybe being a bit self-critical, and actually say like, no, I have done the work, I do deserve to be here, I am valid in this space. And like, yeah, just kind of go for it. Like as you say as well, it's important to compete with yourself. That's the only one you're in competition with at the end of the day.
Right.
It's better to collaborate in the theme of International Women's Day, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I suppose on that, we'll just maybe open up the floor. I don't know, does anyone have any questions for our panel today? Whether it's around International Women's Day, or I suppose what we've been speaking about, which is kind of that gender equality in the technology space. It's okay if we don't have any questions. Look, that's fine. I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. But for yourselves here, is there any kind of lasting kind of piece of advice or something kind of you kind of would have end on yourselves?
Actually, I've noticed, and I've seen from some of the data, that when girls or young women embark on the journey of doing a STEM course, there's quite a high dropout rate in the first year. And I would say to you, stick with it, because you also stand out from the crowd as a female. People want a diverse workforce because it really fuels innovation and so on, and it actually has been proven to impact the bottom line if you have a diverse workforce. So employers out there are genuinely looking for females to redress that balance. So you're at a point of advantage, I would say.
Yeah.
Dare I say it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. And I suppose I hope you guys have been able to take something from this today. And I suppose I just want to thank you all for joining me today. It's been a great discussion.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
And thank you all for attending, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day at Grad Ireland Live.
Thank you.